Hello, welcome to Derby Vineyard Church's Sermon of the Week.
Like I say every time, my name's Andrew, together with Jane, privilege of leading Derby Vineyard. I just wanted to say thank you for letting me do this. I've really enjoyed putting these talks on Ephesians together. I've read the commentaries before, but to read them and have time to think it through and kind of chew on them, it's been really, really good. I don't know if probably none of you did this, but when you were a kid, did you ever pick a long piece of grass and chew the end of it? Yeah? No. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I was from the countryside. And that's a bit how I feel like I'm treating this. You know, I'm getting the chance to kind of chew it and think it through. There's a word in Hebrew which I won't attempt to say. There's a screen for it. It's there. Excellent. Yeah, it means to mutter and meditate, and that's what the Jews would do. They would take a piece of scripture and they kind of chew it and think about it and mutter it and repeat it over and over. And being able to do these talks has been, really helpful for me. So I've been doing quite a bit of muttering. We're going to continue our series on Ephesians. And like I've said before, it's a game of two halves. Gary Lineker, the first half, he's celebrating the Gentiles coming to faith. And the second half, he's talking about how that is worked out. How do you work out that faith? And so we're just starting the second half this time. Paul made his way around the Mediterranean, and as he did that, he planted churches. And I don't know if any of you know anything about planting churches. Well, I'd assume you'd all know something about it because we are planting a church. So thank you very much for joining in. And so one of the things he was really concerned about as he went around planting those churches was how it looked from the outside. Not that he wanted to pander to the society around him, but he wanted it to look authentic. He wanted it to look like it was intended to look like. So often he's quite direct about what he says to people, and sometimes I think some of those passages are the ones that we struggle with because he's conscious of how it looks from the outside. But this passage this morning, he's talking about values. He's talking about the things that we value as a community together. So let's read the first bit. As a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There's one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. So what jumps out at you as we read that passage? Just one word answers. What strikes you? The one word answers. God. You could say that about any... Anything? One. Thank you. Anybody else? Effort. Okay. Okay. We'll come back to that. Anybody else? And this is the reason I'm doing this is because this is how you read the Bible. You read the Bible, and what jumps out at you? What strikes you? And clearly, the word one, unity, is something that he's talking about in this passage. And actually, in this chapter, he talks about two of the kind of main characteristics that we have. Sorry, Charlie, I thought you were putting your hand up. That's all right. Right. Yes. In this chapter, he's talking about two of the main characteristics that he wants the churches to have. The first is unity, and the second, purity. So we're just going to look at the unity thing this morning. So let's work through this and let's kind of chew it over, like I said before. So we start as a prisoner for the Lord. Where is he a prisoner when he wrote this? Rome. Thank you. You were listening last week. And he does the same thing as he did earlier in the letter, where he says, I'm a prisoner of the Lord. for the Lord. He doesn't say, I'm a prisoner of Nero, the Roman emperor. He says, I'm a prisoner for the Lord, because he's thinking about what's important here is what the Lord wants, and everything else is kind of secondary, which is sort of an interesting way to look at life. If you think about your job or you think about your circumstance, what is really going on, the bigger picture, what the Lord wants. So a prisoner for the Lord. And then he goes on, I urge you, and Paul is really passionate. We don't often hear that as we read it, but he's really passionate. I urge you, some versions have beg. I implore you to live a life that between 10:30 and 12 on a Sunday morning is worthy of the... No, he doesn't say that. He says, live a life, the whole of your life, all of your time, your energy, your career, your love life, a life that says, you're God and I'm not. And that you can sum it all up in that, as we say to God, you're God and I'm not. And to live a life that invites others into that relationship with him. So be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. And so in this verse, he lists out 5 things that followers of Jesus are called to. Humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with, forbearance, and love. And we've always said, since we started on this journey of church planting in Derby, that we wanted 4 things which are now going to escape me, but gentleness, humility, brokenness, and compassion. And we said that when we were in Birmingham before we came here all those years ago, and we didn't realise naively that to get brokenness you have to be broken, and to be humble you have to be kind of humiliated. So almost wish we hadn't thought of that, but there we go. Anyway, those things are 5 of the values that he talks about. And to think about humility, you don't need to look any further than the life of Jesus. It says in Philippians, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. You don't find any other religious teacher using the model of a child for what it means to be a follower of Jesus. So I could ask one of the kids to, I won't do, but I could ask one of the kids to come up here as a, what's it called, an aide. Anyway, yeah. But if I was to ask Gus to come up here, that is what Jesus says. That is your model as a Christian. That's kind of humble. So a little thought experiment. Think of somebody that you don't like. Now, you're all godly people and you're like, oh, no, I like everybody. But no, maybe not. Think of somebody you don't like. Now, think of somebody that you do like. Now, you probably don't like the person that you don't like. One of the reasons for that might be because they don't give you the respect that you expect from them. And then somebody that you do like, they do give you the respect that you expect of them. And I read this here's in one of the commentaries. In other words, personal vanity is a key factor in all our relationships. If, however, instead of manoeuvring for the respect of others, which is pride, we give them our respect by recognising their intrinsic God-given value, which is humility, we shall be promoting harmony in God's new society. See, that's a really interesting way of approaching other people. So humility is essential to unity, and pride lurks in discord. Be completely humble and gentle. And gentleness, for me, is power under control. And I want to play you a little video. A few years ago, me and the Marsdens and some others went over to Thailand. And as part of that, it was a mission trip, but, we had some fun at the same time. And we went and watched an elephant doing this. I don't know if technology is going to work for us. Here we go. So gentleness, power under control, and it didn't quite work out. But at the end of the video, you see him holding up the painting, and this is something people go and watch, and I've seen it with my own eyes. So Gentleness, power under control. So it could be that you're having a conversation with somebody and you want to get your point across, and you can just by force of will, but gentleness is allowing God to work through that and allowing him to, not to shout and not to stamp your feet, and allowing him to sort things out. I work as an engineer, and we have these people who are called QSs, quantity surveyors, and they're in charge of the money side of things. And for some reason, they're paid a lot more than us. But anyway, or maybe they're not. I don't know. So the quantity surveyors, and I remember having an argument with one of these guys. He was trying to charge us a lot more money than, trying to charge us extra for something that they would just do normally. And the QS on our side, he said after that conversation, he said to me, "You've got a really gentle way of getting your own way." And I took that as a huge compliment, that I was able to, and it was a huge sum of money, probably hundreds of thousands of pounds, and we're having this argument, and I just kept gently repeating the thing over and over, and he gave in. So I was quite pleased about that. And sorry, to give you another example from engineering, my job now is basically to be the police on behalf of the taxpayer. So I don't let developers do things that would shortchange people. And because I think of myself as the police, I've got all the power. So I can say to people, "No, that's not ready yet. That's not ready yet." And they will jump up and down and shout and scream and get MPs involved and cabinet ministers, and all this kind of thing. And there's me gently saying, "Well, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet." And eventually it will be ready. So gentleness, power under control. Now these two words, gentleness and humility, you might think of another verse that it was even mentioned earlier that has those two words in it. Anybody got any ideas? No? Ah, yes, I knew you'd know. Yes, there we go. Well done. Yeah, so take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. And in Birmingham, there were two young women who we used to hear this verse said quite a bit, and they were like, why what's with the yoke? Why are you getting covered in yellow runny stuff? And it doesn't mean that. It means the yoke of like that you put on oxen, that kind of thing. And I've watched people at work who are not gentle and humble, and it seems like really hard work to live in that style, to always be combative and aggressive and throwing your weight around and shouting and stomping your feet. It just seems like exhausting. So being gentle and humble is just like Jesus says. So gentleness and humility and gentleness go together, and then patience and bearing with one another in love go together as well. And again, with patience, the Lord is our model. Just think how patient he is with you when you make the same mistake over and over, or you do the same thing wrong over and over. He's really patient with us. And one of the things it's talking about here is growing in patience. So if you were to go find a vine, if you saw that vine, there'd be grapes growing on it. And the vine isn't really trying hard to grow grapes. The grapes are growing because they're connected to the vine. And you see the parallel. We are growing in patience because we're connected to patience himself, to the Lord. And finally, it's that love that binds us together, binds the community together. And like it says in Colossians, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive others as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them together in perfect unity. So back to Ephesians. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Now, you know that thing about when something's repeated, you look at why it's been repeated, and it's been repeated to make the emphasis, to emphasize it. Well, obviously, in this little passage, the word one is repeated. And it goes over and over. And there's a U2 song called One. So as I've been working on this, this week, that song has been going round and round my head. But anyway, I won't talk about that. I think there's even the lyrics there. We get to carry each other. Challenging. So what's less obvious than the word one is the way that the Trinity is emphasised in this passage. Oh, the chocolates are going round now. No, it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. Just distraction. No, it's all right. They need the sugar rush. It's fine. Keep going. Yeah. And we are coming into land. So there's one Spirit, there's one Lord, and one Father. You see how the Trinity is brought through there? And this feels a little bit like a GCSE maths problem. I know some of you are studying for GCSE maths, and some of the parents are, relearning the things that they learnt in the past, which is what I've had to do. So it's a little bit like a GCSE maths problem. If we rearrange the equation to make God the subject. So it goes like this: one Spirit, and it relates to one body, so the Jews and Gentiles, and the Spirit binds them together in unity. Like Paul says elsewhere, by one Spirit we were baptized into one body. And then one Lord, which gives us one hope, one faith, one baptism, and one God and Father of all, that makes one family. So if you switch it all around to the way that we're used to saying it, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the Father creates one family, as Ez was talking about earlier. The Lord creates one faith. The Lord Jesus creates one faith, one hope, one baptism, and the Spirit creates one body. So there's a little bit of a problem with talking about unity, in that, the way that the church is today is lots of different churches, and we are a new church plant. When we moved to Birmingham, we could have just joined. When we moved from Birmingham, we could have just joined another church and worked through that church. But we felt that God was calling us to do this, to do something different. And one of the reasons for that is that people fit into our church more easily than they would into a different church. It's not that we're any better; it's just we're different. And so we're going to reach people. We're going to reach different people to the people that other churches reach. And we've always said in the Vineyard that we're just one flavour in the stew. Wimber used to say that we're just one flavour in the stew. We're not anything special. We're just a different flavour. And that has been my experience of the Vineyard the whole time through. The first time I experienced a Vineyard at one of these big conferences where Wimber was speaking, he'd invited people from all sorts of different backgrounds. There was a Catholic guy speaking, a Pentecostal. I think there might even have been an Anglican, but. There are all sorts of different people, and that has always been something that the Vineyard said. We're not anything special; we're just a different flavour in the stew. And we skipped over. I think that the point about this is that the Lord sees the church as one church, even though we express ourselves differently. The Lord sees us as one church. And we skipped over verse 3. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. And I wonder if this is similar to how the now and the not yet of the kingdom works. How we're supposed to demonstrate the not yet of the kingdom now. One of the ways that we do that is by having unity. And I think that works on two levels: on the level of how we get on with each other, but also on how we relate to other churches. And you see that in the letter of Ephesians. It was written to one church, but that church was actually lots of churches dotted around Ephesus. And so I'd like us to do two things as we come to the end of this. Firstly, I'd like us to take communion. And, in that there's an expression of community and unity. Shall we take communion together?
We hope you were encouraged by this message. If you'd like to find out more about Derby Vineyard Church, you can go to derbyvineyard.com or search for us on Instagram and Facebook.